I used to play in an outball pod where everyone was the same. Now I play in a top deck strikes. Monkeys on my plane. Now that I've potentially fully awakened a lost and or hidden memory for a lot of you who are in your 20s to 30s, today we are going to be talking about Rashmi and Ragavan. They are a 2/4 elf monkey commander, and when you cast your first spell each turn, exile the top card of target opponent's library, you make a treasure. If the spell is less than the total artifacts you control, cast that spell for free. Otherwise, this turn you may cast that spell. So to quickly dive right in, we are going to be looking at what our general game plan is and really what our deck focuses around, and that is our commander. That will be Rashmi and Ragavan's ability to create treasures and cast the top deck of players' libraries, specifically, I think only our opponents. And in doing so, it will allow us to get a ridiculous amount of value with the amount of top deck control this deck contains, where you'll be able to look at the top card of players' libraries, play with them revealed, you'll be able to cause people to mill, and you'll be able to look at more than just the top of certain people's libraries. So what this allows us to do is play in a specific way where we're going to manipulate our opponent's libraries so that we can cast the cards from the top of their library for free, or at least get them with reduction because of the treasure we create when we trigger our commander. So our general game plan is to manipulate our opponent's top decks and leverage our mana and value that we're creating from our commander in order to play those spells and potentially pull together a win. So really quickly before we jump into our MVPs of the deck, I'd like to really point your attention towards what the strategy, or I should say the game loop of what this deck's going to play like is going to be. It is going to be identifying a specific target, usually either based off their commander or the board state that they've generated, and then trying to use what you know about a strategy that they're either showing or that they have in order for you to leverage a bunch of powerful effects or spells that you're going to be casting for free or for very little, or really just you're going to be casting in general, while holding up plenty of removal for the cards that are preventing you from playing. Examples be Drannith Magistrate. That is a kill on sight for our deck. We really can't play through that, at least with our strategy, especially since we're so reliant on our commander. So that's why there are plenty of also protection spells in the deck. So keep in mind, when you're playing this deck, it is very commander centralized, so making sure that you're not going to get blown out by losing your commander, at least without a fight, is really how you're going to end up having to play your game loop every turn. So make sure that your commander is something that is both a threat in terms of ability, but also is protected by cards in your hand. So that aside over, we're going to jump right into the MVPs. Our first MVP is the card Lantern of Insight. It is a 1-drop artifact. It allows us to look at everyone's top deck as well as everyone else looking at everyone's top deck, because we're all playing with our top deck revealed. So this is a very clearly useful piece of tech for us in the deck if we're reliant on Rashmi and Ragavan in order to get the trigger to steal people's cards, because we don't want their trash, we don't want their lands, we literally cannot play the lands if we get them. So it's more useful for us to know what we're getting and to allow our opponents to really judge the power level of it versus our opponents getting it against us getting it. So we can also be used as a political tool, and revealing information on the table oftentimes does change game state beyond it just saying, well, we know what you have, it's do we want you to have it? So we've added this and our second place MVP, which is Wizened Snitches, which does essentially the same thing. It's a creature though. Instead of a 1-drop artifact, it's a creature. I believe it's a fairy. And what it allows us to do is look at the top of everyone's library, and everyone plays the top revealed. So it's basically the same card, it's just, creature shifted. Our next major MVP, or third place in this example, our bronze medal holder, is Noxious Revival. Noxious Revival, it's a card that sees play in a lot of Commander. It's a borderline staple, but not quite. It sees a lot of play in competitive, or at least it used to. It is a Phyrexian green instant that allows you to put any card from any graveyard onto its owner's top deck. So it allows us to manipulate the top deck on someone else's turn, And then when we trigger Rashmi Ragavan, we can steal the thing. It also does prevent certain wins from happening. It's very nice. It's a super fun card, and it really can be very ugly to have to play through if someone knows what they're doing. Next up is Veyran, Voice of Duality. It is a wizard, I believe an Ifrit, that says if a spell causes an ability to be triggered, you do it an additional time. And our commander does in fact trigger off of, instants and sorceries being cast. So we're able to, fortunately, or unfortunately for our opponents, be able to get our trigger twice. And we can layer this in a very specific way, but basically the idea is we're able to convert our once a turn effect that if we're not playing properly into 2, so it functionally acts like a top deck control. Veyran is a great little tech piece. It allows us to double up on our effects, and that makes it especially potent in this deck. The final MVP is less a super powerful, potent card like the last one have been, but one that I think sits uniquely in this deck as one of the most powerful options you can be doing, and that is Tomb of Horrors Adventurer. Tomb of Horrors Adventurer allows us to copy our second spell cast on our turn, and that's incredibly powerful if we're getting either free spells or we're able to really choose what our second spell is going to be from our opponents. So getting that in mind and knowing that if you have this out and, it takes the initiative, and if you have completed a dungeon after, you've gained the initiative, you are able to copy the second spell twice, and doing anything twice is good. That's why you run the card in the first place, so doing it 3 times is excellent. Really quick, shifting gears away from individual cards, we are next going to be kind of looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the deck. Let's look at the strengths first, and then we can talk about what kind of weaknesses exist and really how to mitigate those. So first off, the strengths of this deck is your best strength, which is your deck gets better the better your opponent's decks are. So this means essentially you're able to have a better time the better stuff your opponents are playing. Not even necessarily the cheaper, just the better. The deck is also very good at mana production. So the cards you're going to be running want to be able to create mana, so that way you're able to really play the cards even if you can't cast them for free, because you still have access to them in the exile zone till the end of the turn. Our commander gives us access to free spells, which are very valuable to us as players, so having more free spells is generally a good thing, and if having any at all is any indication of the strength of a deck, then this deck is fairly strong. And finally, the commander itself is such a nice little self-sustaining engine of value that we're able to really play around it more than we're able to play with it. So our commander does tend to be the focus of our deck. The weaknesses, well, first off, our commander is a self-sustaining commander, meaning it is a lightning rod. People will absolutely destroy the thing if given the chance. Also, another weakness, our deck is only as good as our opponents. If our opponents have bad decks, we also have a bad deck. Casting from exile can be a little challenging. There are plenty of things that prevent us from either being able to do it at all or really push back our value that we get from doing it. People really also don't like you playing cards better than them, or cards that they can now not play that you've played them. So be aware that will draw a little bit of ire. And this deck is also kind of low in interaction, so that's just another little thing to keep in mind. Lastly, our win lines are rather slim, to be completely honest. There is an infinite combo involving a few cards, kind of chaining together to make infinite creatures, infinite mana. But beyond that, there really aren't that many ways to win, barring you finding stuff from your opponents. So this deck is intentionally left a little weaker, so that way it's not just a, wow, this is great too. It's an actual top deck focused deck that I found would be a little more interesting than some of our other options. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Over the last weekend, I was at the Minneapolis MagicCon 2023. It was a blast. Shout out to everyone that I played with. Shout out to the Commander Cookout podcast specifically. They were great guys. They helped me ruin a $90 Magic card due to some super cool stuff with mental misplay. I've got a Discord I'm starting down below. It's rather new, so I'd appreciate it if you guys jumped in. Also, follow the Moxfield person, or basically my account for this channel, for all the newest decks and stuff. You'll get a little bit of a sneak peek on maybe what I'm looking at. Anyway, thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Pragmatic out.